And we are live on Twitch.
Hi Twitch, hi chat.
Hi
Hi
Twitch, hi
chat.
chat. I usually like Twitch to come in because last week I didn't have my Ethernet cable plugged in, and my Streamlabs was running like Dookie, and I had to record locally just to make sure we kept the episode. So I'm hoping this time it's working well. Hi Crowboy,
This is gonna be
welcome in.
so crisp. It's gonna be so crisp, Haley. Get ready.
It's gonna make such a difference. I'm so excited to see it now.
Oh yeah.
It looks like we're running well. There's no little scary red thing in the bottom left that says drop frame, so I think we're good.
Oh yeah.
Perfect. Well, let's get started then. Hello, 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 and welcome to Bonus Pod, the companion podcast of the MinMax Show. My name is Haley McLean, and I'm joined today by special guest Eric Silver. Hi, Eric.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here. This
Thank
is
you for
great.
coming on. I loved your energy on. I know you're on an episode of the proper MinMax Show, the older
Yes.
sibling of our show right now. Back when Ben was on maternity leave, right? It was with Kyle and Jenna.
It was the first one with Kyle Bossman.
Very
So
fun.
and Jenna was there and Janet, and I was just like, I don't know who Kyle Bossman is, but a lot of people do and seem to be really into that. But I have my Mario Kart takes if you want to talk about that, if that would be good.
I
So
am a
I'm
Mario
glad that I
Kart
get to
head.
come in this way.
No, thank you so much for being on. So, for those who don't know, this is the companion show to the MinMax Show. We record every Monday, and we kind of chat about whatever the heck we want to chat about. Doesn't have to be timely, doesn't have to be releasing this week. It can be whatever we want to talk about. And Eric, shout out to you because you're one of those people who's so easy to Google because you made a whole little website. It was so easy for me to get up to date on everything. That is like the nicest thing ever. I was like, Eric Silver, bam, Eric Silver dot, what was it, notes or something, all your stuff right in a row, all the shows you're on, everything
Something,
you've
yeah.
ever done. I was like, this is perfect. Do you want to maybe introduce yourself and talk about some of the shows you do?
Absolutely. Well, you might know me from Join the Party, which is the actual play Dungeons and Dragons slash tabletop RPG show that I do every week. It's for those of you who don't know, actual play is this wonderful genre where people play Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop RPGs, and like play them on a microphone to create a fiction story and kind of let the rules of the game pull you in one direction or another. And it's really fun. And it's something I've been doing for like 7 years now,
Oh, wow.
and it's been something I've been digging into. But as related to that, I'm also the head of development at Multitude, which is a podcast collective studio and ad sales provider. We're an independent thing, just like MinMax.
Super cool.
It was wonderful being able to talk to Ben and really get in the nitty gritty about like membership and Patreon stuff and podcast ad sales and stuff. I'm like, it's delicious. I love it. I
It'll
eat it up.
waft it
I eat
in.
it up. Yeah, yeah.
Very cool. Oh, I'm getting the Eric's a bit quiet. I'm going to turn you up a little bit. Thank you,
Oh,
chat, for
thank
that.
you.
That's super cool. So I saw as well that you do a bunch of other shows
I
too.
do.
What are like
Yeah, Join the Party is the one that I do mostly now. Like Tell Me About It was this game show that I ran for a while. It was like Taskmaster. Have you seen Taskmaster?
no, what's up?
Oh, okay. It's a British show where basically this one guy who was the taskmaster and his like little assistant, who's also the showrunner of the whole TV show, makes like British comedians do like various silly tasks and they record it. And it's really funny. It's kind of like a small phenomenon. So I try to make a podcast version of that
Oh,
where
very
people
cool.
come on and talk about their favorite thing and they go through like a podcast game show. And I had Adel Rafai of Welcome from the Magic Tavern as like our taskmaster, which was really fun. But that is on hiatus in the moment. And I used to have a Games and Feelings, which was a games advice podcast where we gave advice about any type of game, video game, tabletop RPG, sports, escape rooms, etc. That I was doing for a while there, but that's also on hiatus. We're going in for Join the Party because also I'm going on tour at the end of March, which is
Yeah,
why
you'd
I wanted to
mentioned
come
that.
on and promote it.
That's so exciting.
Minnesota, baby, we're going to the Twin Cities, so I'm like, gotta go to MinMax.
Oh, so exciting. What other places are you hitting up on your tour?
It's from March 21st to the 28th. We're doing 7 cities in like 8 nights. We're doing
Wow.
Seattle, Chicago, Minneapolis / St. Paul, Boston, New York, Philly, DC. And we have 2 days, but our like spare day is in Minnesota. So I'm just like, hey, MinMax, I love it. I want to be here. I want to be in Minneapolis. I'm so excited about it.
Are you going
So
to any
that's
of
why
those
we're coming
places for
there.
the first time?
Yeah, Minneapolis for the first time.
Mm.
Yeah. I'm like, I need to be at the Mall of America. I need to eat a Juicy Lucy. I need Ben Hansen to tell me things that are wonderful about Minnesota. So no, I'm so excited about it. We're doing a tour with Join the Party and with Spirits, which is our mythology show
Oh,
at
very
Multitude.
cool. What type of
Yeah.
mythology?
Oh, it's like legends, folklore, and spooky stuff. They like do all over the place. They do like gamuts of like monsters, and they do learning about all different types of mythology, and then also they do like ghost stories that people write in and they share, or urban legends that people share. It's awesome.
Love it. That sounds so cool. You're busy. You're a busy guy. Thanks for making the time for this little baby bonus pod.
Oh, I mean, I love it. I listen to MinMax all the time. I listen to Bonus Pod, and I'm just like, what if I came on and talked about all of the hard things that I do during the week, and how if work makes me feel fulfilled.
That sounds great. Yeah, so that kind of leads us to our topics we're talking about today. And then, as always, the latter
Mhm.
half of the show, we'll get some Min-Max Council tier members up here. They can ask some questions, have some comments, or whatever. So you came with me with some fun topics that I'm kind of a nerd for because they're IP, who
Yes.
owns what kind of ones. So you're going to be talking a little bit about. And he's prepared a presentation. All my other guests just come on here and they say, what are you going to talk at me about, Haley?" Meanwhile, Eric comes on, has a adorable PowerPoint presentation ready to go, raising the
It's
stakes.
Canva, Haley. It's Canva. Let's
Canva's
give respect to
cute.
Canva, please.
Canva is so cute. Canva is the like really hot older sister of PowerPoint that
Oh,
knows
hell yeah.
everything and is really popular on
Hot
Twitter.
Australian cousin to PowerPoint.
Exactly. I have a pro account and it's one of the few things that I'm like, I'm gonna keep this. I don't care if it's extra. I won't buy Netflix, but I'll have a Canva Pro. That's the priorities right there.
1000%. Canva Pro will love you back. Netflix won't.
Exactly. So your presentation is a bit on Hasbro, how it's kind of utilizing its IP these days, specifically Dungeons and Dragons. And I see the title of
Yes.
your presentation: "The company that owns Dungeons and Dragons is taking the wrong lessons from video games." Love it.
Yes. Well, first, I was originally going to talk about Baltro and how great I am at Baltro. But I realized I couldn't do that. I that wouldn't have been fair. But I need to tell everyone I'm playing a lot of Baltro and I'm really good at it. So everyone needs to acknowledge that before we start.
Oh, I still have not beat a run, and it's actually my client's game. I'm a video game lawyer, and my client made this game, and I cannot beat a run. And I've messaged them, and I'm like, "Oh, your game's so fun. How the frig do I beat a run? I can't do it. I've tried. I'm like 15 hours in, and I haven't won a run yet. I feel crazy. Like meanwhile, Jeff was on
You
like
can
win a
get
million.
there. It is hard though. I mean, I played a lot of Slay the Spire and like a lot of like those difficult roguelikes. Like I love Enter the Gungeon. It's like one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So I feel like I grinded really hard for a while. So it did take me a while. I think it took like 10-ish hours to win my first run. So I'm with you. I think you just gotta pick the deck that you like the most. Like
Okay.
one that you jibe with the most, and then you can kind of go from there.
The closest I got was actually just a pair run. I just
Oh
gassed
hell
up
yeah.
a single pair was worth more than like a royal flush, and if I did it, I think with hearts and face cards, it was just like go crazy. And then I think I was
Mm.
doing the one where I had one extra discard. When I feel
Oh
like
yeah.
I probably should have done the one where it was one extra joker or something because like,
Yeah.
I didn't need cards and hands as much, but look at me. Look at you already. This works on me. Even I can't stop talking about Baltro. It's so
No, you should
fun.
do yellow. I think starting with money from the jump is
Yellow.
really helpful. You should try yellow.
Yeah, I've only been doing like
Okay.
red and blue.
Yeah, yeah. I would advise you to do yellow. And
Gotcha.
you can keep me on retainer like I was your lawyer. That would be helpful.
You're my
All
Baltro
right.
coach. Just
Yeah,
one
it's
thought
true.
for audio listeners, because there will be audio listeners. Eric has prepared a beautiful presentation. So if you'd like to also see visuals for this podcast today, you can go to the MinMax Stream Archives channel, and you'll be able to see this episode with the full video and all the visuals too. So just a thought there. If you're listening, you're like, I kind of want to see this too. Pop over to that channel on YouTube, and you can watch as well.
I can put this like on Google Drive too, and you can put it in as a link in the episode description if you want.
Oh, that'd be great. Sure.
I'm a min-max RSS kind of guy, so I'm thinking about me out there.
What's the least number of clicks for me?
Yeah. Okay, so
love
yeah,
it.
I wanted to talk to you, Haley, because I think as someone who deeply loves Baldur's Gate 3, and I listened to you talk about how much you love Baldur's Gate 3 a
Mm-hmm.
bunch, And there's a lot happening with Hasbro and with Dungeons and Dragons that I think I really wanted y'all to touch on. But it's like Sarah, I ended up playing. Sarah was on Join the Party playing Dungeons and Dragons with me before, so I've been able
So
to talk to
fun.
her a little bit about that. It was so much fun playing with her. Um, but it's like I was interested because of how much you talked about Alan Wake 2 being like incredible of how it mixed media and how it like broke through IP and how the relationship of Alan Wake with the guy with the shooting game that they used to do.
Max
um
Payne.
Max Payne. I'm like, well, Baldur's Gate 3 is like an adapted screenplay version, and I'm surprised that kind of never came up because
Hmm.
it's so out of the box. Dungeons and Dragons, the one that Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro, who owns them. Like, it's
Yeah.
different than the game of Dungeons and Dragons, which is why I didn't play Baldur's Gate 3 because I'm like, I got it. I don't need Drow in my game. Like, I don't want to talk to Drow. I don't want to think about Drow, so I'm not going to. And I think it's kind of related to where Dungeons and Dragons, this massive, massive game, has gone as compared to like, it's really interesting as compared to like how video game companies are doing, especially because like there was a rumor that like Hasbro was gonna sell the Dungeons and Dragons brand to Tencent
I
or
saw that
something.
last like couple weeks ago. Yeah.
So it's like this is a piece of IP, and as it interacts with video games, but like the game tabletop RPGs on its own is like blowing up as well, and it's all getting really really icky.
Hmm.
And that's what I want to talk about. So the company that owns Dungeons and Dragons is taking the wrong lessons from video games, or what I do for fun at my table has nothing to do with money for a company. I I think that's
Intrigued.
kind of the tension that we're talking about here is like when we talk about video games, it's like you're interacting with a piece of art that someone has given you, right? You can only do as much, but like tabletop RPGs are an imagination machine, you
Yeah.
know? Like it's just rules and you can just come up with stuff for your friends, but they're trying to monetize it like a video game, which is crazy.
Okay.
So you've heard of Dungeons and Dragons, right? You've heard of it, you know?
I think I heard about it in like some show called Stranger Things or something.
I
Offhandedly
mean, a
one
lot of
time.
people have. I mean,
Yeah, that's
that's
how my
fair.
mom heard about it.
They are totally leaning into that. I think that from Stranger Things and from Community and with the Dungeons and Dragons movie, they obviously think this is something they can like turn into an IP machine. And
Hmm.
also a lot of actual play shows and podcasts like Critical Role, Dimension 20, not another D&D podcast, The Adventure Zone, Join the Party. People are interacting with the game through different ways. Like they're listening to these shows that are showing them how beautiful this game is, and then they're picking up the game and playing it. It's also worth noting that like the whole genre is called tabletop RPGs. Like we're talking Dungeons and Dragons is just one game inside of it. It's almost like imagining if you were to say like, oh yeah, video games, and they're like, oh, you mean Halo? You mean Halo? The only game I play is Halo. I don't want to play any other game. It's like, no, there's a lot of other stuff. It's like, no, it's just I only play the Halo series. That's it. So it's one game is dominating this whole thing, which I think is really interesting,
Yeah.
especially as to do with the company.
No, that
All
is
right.
interesting.
And here's another fun thing. Dungeons and Dragons is a game, but it's also a brand that got bought by Wizards of the Coast in the 90s, and then Hasbro bought Wizards of the Coast in like the 20 aughts.
This is what
So
I'm a nerd for is the IP chain. Where's the moral right? Where's the economic right? Have they been passed around? What's going on here? Like, yeah, I'm a super nerd for this kind of stuff.
oh yeah. Well, it's interesting to know because the guy who invented Dungeons and Dragons, Gary Gygax, he started his own company called TSR, which was just kind of like a games and fantasy book. It was like a publishing company just so he could publish his game, and that is what got bought by Wizards when they got huge making Magic the Gathering.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that's the interesting stuff. It's worth knowing that they had to like get bought because TSR had their own problems. Did you know that the Tolkien estate sued Dungeons and Dragons because they used too many of their fantasy words in
Oh
their
my
books?
gosh. No, I didn't know that, but wow, I want it. Did that go to court or was that settled outside? Do you know?
It was settled outside. They
Yeah, I was
didn't
gonna
get there.
say they
Yeah,
would
you can
never
see
take
because
that to court.
some of this stuff is still used in games now, like Dragon and Dwarf and Goblin made it, but Hobbit and Ent did not make it. That's why they're halflings in
Mm,
Baldur's Gate 3, and they're not hobbits. Yeah. This is Gary Gygax talking about it on a message board. He just said it. He just posted about it.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. I would love to see these kind of things get litigated though, just to see like is there enough creative element in the word hobbit compared to it? Like I feel like dragon, no chance. Come on,
No.
dragon. That's in every cult. Like so many cultures have dragon stuff back and to when humans first started thinking about what would be a cool monster. It's like a dragon.
Right, right, right,
But
right.
something about yeah, hobbit that feels very Tolkien, and maybe that's just because no one's touched that since then. But yeah, I'd be interested to see how one would argue Hobbit has sufficient creative element that gives it its originality versus a dragon. It's like every single country ever has thought of a dragon before Tolkien.
They discussed it though. Like they did actually decide that. You can see that at the bottom that Gary Gygax said the action demanded we removed Balrog, Dragon. Only Balrog and Warg were unique names. We agreed to Hobbit as well. Keep the rest, of course. So they just settled it out of court, but they decided together what was worth it to get the Tolkien estate off their back, so they could keep
Interesting.
doing it. This is interesting. So it's like they kind of needed to sell it. It was there. That's a whole other conversation, but it got complicated. So I want to talk about my spicy take before, which is that I didn't play Baldur's Gate 3 because I think the Forgotten Realms is boring. I think that the Forgotten Realms is really obsessed with like fantasy race science. I think they're obsessed with like drow enslaving humans a lot, and
Yeah.
it's just like it's so for what it is now. It feels like such bog standard fantasy as compared
Interesting.
to like something a lot more like experimenting with the fantasy tropes.
Do you
But
think
I mean that's also
that's sorry, do you think that's because you're
no, go ahead.
so like so I'm a newbie booby D&D person. I've never played D&D.
Sure.
I tried. I like tried to scruffle some friends together to do it and no one was interested. Still want to play in
Mhm.
person with people. It's like I think that'd be so fun.
Oh, you should. It's awesome. It's the best.
Yeah, so because this was my introduction to it, is that why I'm like, wow, this is amazing. But if someone who's more experienced with like all the different D&D outside of just the Forgotten Realms is like, this is kind of Weenie Hut Jr. version of that, like what that world could do for a video game, so to speak.
Well, I think that I would ask you a question is like, let's extrapolate it from Dungeons and Dragons. Did you, because I really wanted y'all to talk about it and you didn't, did you think the world of the Forgotten Realms was interesting? Or you're just like, yeah, Dragonborn are tight. The tieflings are hot.
I was really intrigued by the first area, Act One's area, the forest. But that's again, it's
Hmm.
kind of a forest, but it just felt very nostalgic, yet I haven't been here before.
Yes.
And but in terms of like the characters and the cultures of the said characters interacting with the locations I was in, it was kind of lacking that sort of okay, here's how the land around us was influenced via the cultures of said races and whatever that happened to inhabit it, and it was more kind of just a forest. But I was just like,
Yeah.
wow, I can do so much in the forest that I didn't really care that
Right.
it lacked that maybe.
And that's why Larian is very good at what they do. I think that that's when I thought about this thing. I'm like, Larian crushed it as a game. Like they really did as much as possible to make character creation and do and figuring out everything you can do as possible. Like that's interesting, but the Baldur's Gate license and the Dungeons and Dragons IP they used, I'm like, I'm so not interested in this. Like I'll pass. I got it.
Interesting.
I got it. And it's worth saying that it's like it really was bog standard fantasy because it was actually the Dungeons and Dragons setting of this guy named Ed Greenwood.
Yeah.
So let's talk about IP lawyer. This guy started playing Dungeons and Dragons in 1975. He then
Okay.
created the Forgotten Realms as his Dungeons and Dragons campaign setting
A
for all of
derivative
his
work.
friends. Yeah, and then TSR, the company that ran Dungeons and Dragons before, was like, "Oh man, we need a new setting. Does anyone want to? What can we use?" And this guy was writing. This guy Ed Greenwood was writing into like their like fantasy writing journal called Dragon that TSR had, and they're like, "Oh man, that's so cool. Can we use this?" And he sold all of his stuff for 5K and a promise to
Oh,
publish his novels.
that is. I hate hearing that kind of posthumous like someone got robbed before the IP made it big sort of thing. That always hurts.
Yeah.
to
But
hear.
it makes more sense though, because like TSR was a publishing company. Like, oh hell yeah, they're gonna publish my fantasy novels. That's awesome. And like Ed Greenwood did really well, and he wrote cajillions of fantasy novels set in the Forgotten Realms.
But he doesn't have any long-term licensing perpetual royalty rights or anything to do with Forgotten Realm. It's just like a 5K lump sum, thank you, and we'll publish this also as a secondary obligation.
That's my understanding.
Ah, that's too bad.
Yeah, it's
Even a
tough.
freaking 0.5% royalty this far into it with all the stuff that's been going on could have been
I don't know
so
for
much.
sure, but I don't know if Hasbro would be doing what they're doing if they have to pay royalties to Ed Greenwood like that.
Yeah.
So even from the beginning here is that TSR, right, like I said, they were a publishing company, even though Greenwood turned his D&D campaign into IP, and then Hasbro, and then it's trying to get sold back to us, that is the definitive world in that Dungeons and Dragons can and should be set. That actually has nothing to do with what I'm doing at my table, because I'm coming up with my own story and world. So it's like, it just doesn't have anything to do with me. And I think that's where Hasbro is getting over their skis a little bit, as they're pivoting fully to IP creation as their entire company's like strategy.
Okay, I see what you mean. Like, so where the fun of this IP outside of the scope of highly commercialized products is player creativity, you shouldn't be banking all your money on that because you're just making derivative works of something that you could potentially omit a few details that, like a Hobbit word, like a whatever word, and
Right.
make it your own original IP long term.
Yeah. I think, yeah, exactly. But maybe someone would run up to me like a Hasbro executive and be like, well, what about Baldur's Gate 3? You're right. Baldur's Gate 3 absolutely freaking crushed it. They did an incredible job. And because Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering were the two most profitable departments of Hasbro. And like they have, the Dungeons and Dragons has never been more popular, Magic the Gathering has never been more popular, and they're making money. And yet, Hasbro laid off people around Christmas specifically from the D&D and Magic teams.
Yeah.
Uh, you're gonna hear this guy's name a lot. CEO Chris Cox. Yep, that's his real name. That's
Great
his
name.
real name. We are entering 2023 expecting a year of change, including significant updates to our leadership team, structure, and scope of operations. Vomit, vomit,
What
vomit.
about with you, Chris? Does that include you, Chris?
Oh no, it doesn't. He made
No,
nine
never
million
does.
dollars. He made $9 million last year. Don't worry, Haley. Don't
Ugh,
worry.
frustrating.
I and guess who got laid off? Oh, some of the people who worked on Baldur's Gate 3 from the Wizard of the Coast side. This is from the Baldur's Gate 3 speech from the Game Awards when the guy was wearing the suit of armor. He said
Iconic.
this.
Yeah.
He wanted to thank Wizard of the Coast, and he said specifically, because this happened after the layoffs. I'm sorry, so many of you let go. It's a sad thing to realize that of all the people who were in the original meeting room, there's almost nobody left. I hope you all end well, which is an absolute bummer and might be a problem because Baldur's Gate 3 takes 6 years to make.
Yeah.
So in the time from when it started to when they're finally making money off of this thing, yeah, massive hit, over 10 million per copies sold. Even though it was a massive success, the company that licensed who's licensed the D&D brand to Larian laid off the people who shepherded it through this area, even though that was what the whole money making scheme in the first place.
Which then
It
made
just, it
money.
doesn't make any sense. Sorry, say that again.
I said, you said the money making scheme, and I followed up with which then made the money they wanted. Like they got the money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It did the thing that they wanted.
The thing. Yeah.
The other thing that they are learning from video games, Hasbro is that they're trying to monetize the Dungeons and Dragons space like it's a digital live service game, which
Mm-hmm.
sucks. It extremely sucks.
Just reading
This
this
is
quote
from a
too here.
Dicebreaker article. This is
Yeah.
from a Dicebreaker article where the Wizard of the Coast CEO, Cynthia Williams, said D&D has never been more popular and we have great fans and engagement, but the brand is super under monetized. And they don't like that only the dungeon master like buys stuff and shares with his table. They think what if everybody paid us for when they're playing Dungeons and Dragons in their own house?
So I'm trying to picture a model where this would even work. In their hypothetical ultra capitalist view, if you wanted to have a D&D campaign in your house, you as the
Mhm.
DM would buy the campaign booklet information, whatever. And would
Yeah.
that be a way for them to track that you are doing that service and then reach out and inquire about how many people are in your party and they also pay a fee or something?
Well, that's a really good question, Haley. You're already on top of it because
How
you're a
would that
super
even
smart
work?
lawyer. How do we make everyone pay, even though that's not how humans pay our game? It's a great
Mm.
question. Well, here's the wonderful thing. They got to tell their investors this, and therefore you. Let's go look at a 10K SEC filing.
Public companies, baby.
Hell yeah. This is the 10K. A 10K means that this is like the end of the year thing that they need to publish. Or ordinarily, they have to share quarterly earnings reports with their folks, but one of our players and my wife and the CEO of Multitude, Amanda, used to work in banking, so she has told me all about this stuff, and I love kind of like digging. I
Oh,
love digging
during the
through the whole
Unity
thing.
fiasco, I was looking at all their 10Ks.
Yeah.
It tells you so people don't realize how much information they have to disclose about when they're switching CEOs or letting people go or what have you.
Yeah. It's incredible the stuff in here, and I'm going to share some stuff from it. But Haley, Hasbro is a real big company, and you know that they're a big company because they do big company things. One of which is share this kind of stuff, but also they hired the Pinkertons last year. You know the Pinkertons from Red Dead Redemption?
Yeah. And they're real, right? I thought they
Yeah.
were made up for that game. Who was that? Someone mentioned that to me, and they were like, "The Pinkertons will get you." And I was like, "Ha ha ha!" They're like, "No, they're real, right?" I was like, "What?" Like I didn't realize that was a real thing.
Haley, American history is filled with paramilitary organizations ready to do anything for anyone if they tell them to.
Oh dear.
Yeah, they last year they hired the Pinkertons, real detective agency, to go to somebody's house and get magic cards that they got early accidentally. Like it was like there was like a marketing mix up and they got sent some magic cards before the release date.
Yeah.
And the Pinkertons knocked on his door and scared him because that's what happens. That's what big companies do. They hired the
And it
Pinkertons.
wasn't even his fault. He just got them sent early by mistake because they had poor marketing. It's not like
Yes,
he
he
stole
he
them.
Yeah, exactly. He said that they were unreleased and like, he's a YouTube he was like an MTG YouTuber and he got it sent accidentally. I believe him because the Pinkertons are scary. You do not want them at their house. Like this isn't like one of those emulator cases where it's like, yeah, we did it intentionally. We did it. We think they weren't like taking a stand against a big corporation. It was an accident that he got this. This guy had like 1,000 subscribers too on
Oh
YouTube. Like he
no.
was relatively small. It's just a bummer.
Oh my god. Edgar Ross could come to my door if I play a magic card wrong or some shit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why you
Terrifying.
gotta have a six-shooter by you at all times, just in
Arthur
case.
Morgan bodyguard.
Yeah, exactly. Just for anyone who hasn't seen one of these before, this is a screenshot of what the beginning of a form of a 10K looks like. Man, it is so businessy. It is so incredibly businessy.
Gotta
I,
have
ca-
all
I can
that
feel
info.
my eyes glazing over already.
Oh, see, my eyes are trained to stare at this so I understand every single element. It's so boring.
No. Well, don't worry. They posted summaries of the fourth quarter
Very
earnings
nice.
report and the full year, which came out 2 weeks ago, but the 10K came out. Oh, I guess I took a screenshot. This is from a few weeks ago, but it's the same stuff that they eventually published in this massive document, but it's harder to screenshot the 10K. So I screenshotted a bunch of this stuff. Um, they've been talking about this strategy called fewer, bigger, better that Hasbro has been pushing forward, which means we do too much. Let's just focus on our core stuff, which is very scary when you've been hearing video game companies just do that. Let's only focus on our core stuff. It's like, oh, that means a lot of people are going to get laid off and stuff's going to
Yeah, I was
get
gonna
cut.
say fewer,
It's
bigger,
scary.
better is just layoff, layoff, layoff in different words,
Hmm.
pretty
Yeah,
much.
yeah. Last year, Hasbro had $1.199 billion in losses.
Ooh,
1.199 billion with a B. Billion with a B. They
Q4
kind of
revenue.
underline the stuff that I said before, which is that Hasbro, Wizards of the Coast, and digital gaming, which is the stuff that the video games and Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering did better, while everything else did way worse, including entertainment, because the Dungeons and Dragons movie did a bad job, and they also like did a weird thing by selling or buying a studio back. It was confusing, and also like the massive boom that happened in people buying toys and games from 2020 to 2022 slowed down, and they had too many toys on hand, so they lost a bunch of money because of that. That's the 25% right here.
Was that also somewhat to do with like COVID over marketing promises? Like, you know what I mean? When COVID
Yes.
happened, it felt like everyone invested in only things you can do at home. And then as soon as we were out of that lockdown phase, they're just sitting on all this stuff that they can't sell because we're out about again. Is that a kind of part of it too?
Yeah, 100%. Like, you have to understand, Hasbro paid attention to what video game companies did. Chris Cox and Cynthia Williams used to work at Xbox. Like, they
Mm.
they know what they're talking about. They brought video game people in to figure this stuff out, and that's where they're learning from video games, and it's kind of tough.
Negative
Um,
49% entertainment net profit loss. That's crazy.
yeah, I mean,
50%.
it did happen because of that studio thing that they did, but also the Dungeons and Dragons movie did not do as well as they thought it would.
Gotcha.
I like this slide because it's funny seeing the word Furby on a on a quarterly report, on a
Full
year-end
year
report.
growth in G.I. Joe Furby. Performed well in launch year.
Yeah. But here we go. This is doubling down on the thing that I said. So there was the increase came from Baldur's Gate 3, which again took 6 years to make and was a licensed property from Hasbro to Larian. Hasbro did the good job by licensing Dungeons and Dragons by getting the third entry into the Baldur's Gate series. Who cares what Larian did? No, that was good for us. And also Monopoly Go is this incredibly microtransaction-y Monopoly
I see
app that made a lot of
TikTok ads for that, and they all suck.
money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's the question again. Will tabletop RPG gamers pay Hasbro for the privilege of getting the rules to their imagination machine? Like we saw, they are going all in on Dungeons and Dragons stuff. They made the D&D movie. They made a lot of money from Baldur's Gate 3, but Baldur's Gate 3 takes 6 years to make. So how are they going to make this money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I think the biggest disconnect happens. Is like when we're talking about a video game, it is a discrete like piece of art, right? It is a discrete medium. Like you play it and you interact with it in the way that you want people to interact with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have the Sonic thing of Sonic wants shorter games with worse graphics made by people who are paid more to work less, and I'm not kidding. Like that is the problem that's happening over in video games, is like they want something so big, something that's so incredible that to make up like the scope of everything is too big. But Dungeons and Dragons can never be that big. It's impossible because it's a book. It's a set of rules for an imagination. And here I have some PDFs. This is all the PDFs I have in my Dropbox that I can just access. Like it's not the same scope. I think another way to understand it, it's like when someone interacts with a video game, they have like the yellow stairs problem, which
Mm-hmm.
again is not a problem, but that was blowing up recently,
Oh my god,
where
yeah.
it's
Why
like
is it always yellow? Horizon Zero
it's like, yeah,
Dawn.
because of because you need it, player. The player needs the yellow stairs, right?
Yeah.
Well, on the right, here is from a game called Fiasco, and there's kind of like a running joke in tabletop RPGs that you always got to set up like what a tabletop RPG is. Like, what is the imagination we're going to do together? And it's like Fiasco is a highly collaborative game where players are engaged by throwing out suggestions, brainstorming, and listening. Totally different verbs when we're talking about play and interaction as opposed to collaboration, suggestion, brainstorming, listening. They're two different pieces of mediums, and it just doesn't make any sense why
Hmm.
they're trying to like do video game stuff when they're like they are a publisher of an imagination machine.
Hmm.
The other thing, which I don't know if you know about, is like, do you know about what happened with the open gaming license over in Dungeons and Dragons last year?
They were going to rescind it or something and make it a commercial purpose only license or something like that.
Yeah. So the shortest way I can describe it is one of the ways that Hasbro is trying to make their money back is they're not allowing other people to make third party versions of Dungeons and Dragons stuff without like they changed the whole situation. They were trying to change the whole situation. Basically, everyone freaked out because the people who interact with the game and like make creative stuff for it are the lifeblood of what makes the thing popular, and being able to sell it for like, $5, $10, or maybe you publish your own book of like, and you're distinctly not Wizards of the Coast, but it made the whole scene and the whole game valuable in the first place. And they wanted to crunch down on it, and then everyone freaked out and they're like, oh, we were never going to do that in the first place. It's like, all right, sure.
Said
Okay.
every corporation ever. Yeah.
Yeah. So instead, they're trying to make everything into Fortnite. They're trying to smash as many IP collaborations as possible into this thing, just
Hmm.
like Peter Griffin in Fortnite. We got they had a collaboration with Wendy's to make a sort of game. Of course,
What?
Rick and Morty got in the mix. Here at the bottom is all of the sets they're going to do in 2024 for IP, like IP mashups in Magic the Gathering. They're doing a lot of this in Magic the Gathering. They're explicitly moving it from being a competitive card game to a collectible card game. So it's
Hmm.
no longer really about the play. It's about buying as much as possible. They said that, and now it's happening.
Okay.
It
The
sucks.
the Wendy's thing kills me. I'm order of the double stack.
It was weird. It was a whole weird thing. And now
This
you add
Oh no, I was just gonna say this increase. It's just like in the last 5, 10, 15 years. This I call it IP barf. I hate
yeah,
to see it. It's just instead of IP collaborating for the sake of the two pieces of work working well together from either like an artistic or even like financial. If it this makes sense, let's combine our efforts and both make more money in a good product. That sounds good. But it's just
hmm
Rick and Morty Dungeons and Dragons. Like I don't doubt someone will like that and have fun, but was that made with the spirit of let's make a cool product, or was that made with the spirit of chuck it on there, see how many we sell? And that's what it is. It's like these movies like Pixels or
yeah,
Ready Player One and stuff like it's just showing things for the sake of we got the license. It's not about making something cool. It's look what we got. We got Iron Giant. We got to have him on screen at least for X amount of minutes. I'm like, well, that doesn't matter. Like,
exactly.
I just hate the trend that it's going towards is licensing for the sake of licensing just to see what comes out of a stone if you squeeze it hard enough. It's like the most boring kind of creative effort, if you can even call it
Yeah.
that. Rant
And
over.
Hasbro is squeezing the Wizard of the Coast the hardest because it's the only thing going for them. So
Yeah.
they're squeezing it and they're microtransacting it. Now, here is the question that we had before. How do you change someone's behavior from just your friend coming over and sharing the book with everyone to have every single person pay to play Dungeons and Dragons? Well, the way that you do it is you change the next edition of fifth of Dungeons and Dragons to be a live service game.
Oh no.
We are currently on the fifth edition of Dungeons and Dragons right now. That's the one that's been blowing up the most. It came out 20 I want to say 2013, and it really led. That's where everything's been blowing up and why it's been getting so popular. So they're like, oh, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna go to one D&D, which is that it's not gonna be editions anymore. We're gonna put it all online, and you got to subscribe to get the most recent Dungeons and Dragons. That's how
Yuck.
you do it, Haley.
How do they make the players? Because wouldn't it still just be have to be the DM who's subscribing? Like, is there a way for them to also get the players to be paying for the privilege of seeing info behind the scenes?
Well, the way that you do it is that there's they have Dungeon D&D Beyond here. You see the D&D Beyond platform, which was something that Wizards of the Coast bought, and they absorbed into their online platform in 2022. What they're doing is they're making everyone or encouraging people to make their character sheets online, so that you got to follow along with the character sheets online with the most updated Dungeons and Dragons editions and tweaks and stuff. And
Hmm.
also, there's like a virtual tabletop element that they're trying to push. because that's how you control everyone. You put everyone on the computer, and you got to subscribe to be online and play the game.
And what if people just didn't care about what's new in D&D and stick with fifth edition? Is it just you're sacrificing the the new hotness of what's happening in the D&D world? Like, because where it's based on your imagination, right? Why couldn't I just stick with fifth edition and come up with I guess I'm just so D&D illiterate.
Yeah.
What do you think
Well,
as
no,
a DM
that's
there?
fair. Well, a lot of people still play 3.5, which is a there's it's confusing, but people still play earlier editions of Dungeons and Dragons because that's the one they grew up with, and they never learned the new one. So
Okay.
you're right. There is no incentive necessarily to move over, other than them pushing and saying this is the new hotness, and tying it to game tweaks and new additions and new content from Wizard of the Coast set in the Forgotten Realms. I think that the D&D movie was made, and also to some extent Baldur's Gate 3 was made to get people into the Forgotten Realms and want content there. And be
Okay.
in it's no longer an imagination machine. It's a game we play within the prescribed world that they are serving us. To bring people into the new hotness and need to be online and have the newest editions or the newest game tweaks.
And is that I'm kind of seeing not your sneaky point. Is that kind of what Baldur's Gate 3 did? Was just give you a monetized version of a single D&D campaign completely controlled by one party that does have a lot of choice. It's my game of the year last year.
Yes.
It sounds like I'm coming for it. My favorite game last year. But that's kind of what a D&D video game is. Just minus like the effort of the developers to make it pretty and polished and have
Yeah.
player agency.
Larian absolutely crushed it, right? Like I cannot say more about how Larian did an incredible job and almost made it feel like there was a dungeon master on the other side, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. Wizard of the Coast licensed the Baldur's Gate 3, wanted the third in the Baldur's Gate 3 to encourage this and to bring it on. Now, do people like it? Is this still how we enjoy playing this thing? Yeah, I guess so. But it's like it's almost like they managed to put a butterfly in a jar, right? Like they managed to take something as ephemeral as playing pretend with your friends and they put it in a box, and that box is your computer. Because again, I love video games. I love playing the thing that someone has made and brought me. But what I don't like is when they took imagination and put it in a jar and then said, all right, now you have to interact with it in the same way you interact with video games.
Hmm. And
It really bothers me.
I really you very much made it all click for me in this last slide. I was like, oh yeah, that's just what Baldur's Gate 3 did. But I'm so much more mad at the subscription model approach to it. But with that thought, let me see what I'm most curious about. Going back to the Hobbit orc whatever thing. If let's pretend Baldur's Gate 3 was whatever something something and it had absolutely no proper nouns to do with Dungeons and Dragons, but similar fantasy styled gameplay. It's just there's no locations that are based in the Forgotten Realm. There's no background lore. It's just like here's a orc, here's a halfling, whatever, like what we've been accustomed to that you could argue don't have copyright protection because they're just ideas based, not the expression of ideas. Would you play that game and it not bother you as much?
Well, I mean, we're getting into another reason why I didn't want to play Baldur's Gate 3 is that the Forgotten Realms has a lot of stuff that's like of bog standard fantasy that really bothers me. Like I said, fantasy race science being obsessed with like orcs are big and goblins are small and stuff like that, and you can extrapolate that to other stuff. I think that like the plots like the Illithid and Drow are deeply uninteresting to me as plot devices. Is like, oh wow, a weird octopus guy that possesses your brain, cool and good. I'd rather play or interact with a different thing. And like, listen, I come up with the stuff like I'm a game designer, I'm a professional dungeon master, I'm joining the party. Like I come up with stuff all the time. So it's like I don't want your bog standard stuff about red mages. I just don't like it. So it's like that's what I think is really interesting is like the Forgotten Realms I think is the most down the middle fantasy world that the most down the middle fantasy world, and I think that's why they bought it from Ed Greenwood. Like Ed was living his Tolkien fantasy with his friends.
Yeah.
But once a company got their hands on it, they're like, "Oh, this will please as many people as possible." Because it's the most like Tolkien that we have, which is why the Tolkien estate sued them in the first place. Like
Mm.
the IP they were working with was the fantasy genre, right? So it's like I don't have time for that. But now they're trying to sell it and tell me, no, don't imagine what you want. Imagine what we want, which is the most straightforward down the middle fantasy genre thing possible.
And in terms of marketability, you don't see them ever, not ever, but most of the marketing efforts for this thing are going to go towards the people that would want that vanilla styled D&D experience, that more handholdy, I want to play D&D, but play it at me kind of energy. That's who they're looking
Yeah.
for with this new subscription model. And in terms of the players who've been playing forever and, maybe are still playing 3.5 or 5th edition, whatever, do you think they're going to market towards those people at all, or are they kind of cutting their losses and just trying to see what new markets they can get?
I wonder. Well, I mean, they're so excited by how popular the game is that I think they're just kind of like putting slop in the slot machine.
Yeah.
And like they want people, like they hate homebrew, right? It's like they don't want people to come up with their own classes and subclasses and items because it's really difficult to put into D&D Beyond. Like they want you to pay for the online version. The other thing I'm saying is like 1D&D I don't think is coming to books. I think that they're like might do a little bit of it, but like they ultimately want to be digital only so that you have to do the subscription.
Yeah.
So I think because like they're riding how popular it is because of people have had so much fun playing the game and interacting with actual play podcasts and shows, and they're biting the hand as companies love to do. They're biting the hand that fed them by laying off the people who shepherded Baldur's Gate 3 into this thing, and they tried to shut down the OGL, the Open Gaming License, and they want to be the only people who are allowed to sell Dungeons and Dragons stuff in their world the way that they want to do it.
So this comes out post release. What are you going to
Yeah.
do as a DM? Are you curious? Do you think you'll get the subscription just to look and see and then maybe bounce back to 5th edition? Or is it like nope, not touching it, sticking to what we know?
It's coming out at the end of 2024. I do have some time.
Okay.
So it's just like I wanted to bring this up because of the how Baldur's Gate 3 popped so hard on in Game of the Year stuff, and no one talked about this at all, which
Well,
is
yeah,
why
yeah.
I brought it to you in the first place.
No, it's an interesting
But
topic because it really was like the training wheels of that kind of service, right? It's like if you loved this, get ready for this, and but that creation in of itself is kind of the antithesis of the purpose of the work in of itself,
Yeah.
to be a derivative works machine and lend on the creativity of the player. No, this is like such an interesting topic. I love that you brought this. It's something that you don't think you're just because Baldur's Gate 3 still love it. It's Game of the Year last year, but it's interesting how as a consumer I cannot realize that if I take 20 million steps back and realize what these corporate entities are actually trying to do is set up these dominoes in a way that just makes them money down the road, even if the product, the domino they're using, was extremely well made and very good and polished and was Game of the Year. It's still a domino.
Right. Yeah. And it was interesting how like you praised Alan, not to put you on blast because I listened to your Game of the Year stuff. It's like,
I still love Alan Wake. Watch it.
I love how you fought for Alan Wake too, because you're like, it's intertextual, it's intermedium, there's so much going on, the art, it's so precise the way that they do it. And then Baldur's Gate 3 was like, it is literally the adapted screenplay, and the screenplay they pulled in like the Forgotten Realms is boring. And like Larian did all the hard work, not even though it's called Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very interesting how it's like you can praise Alan Wake for that when they want to surface that, but when they want to hide it, it's something that can be elided over in that way. Yeah. But here's the thing is like you can just keep playing the paper stuff. Keep playing 5th edition. You can someone can loan you their player's handbook and their DM's guide, and you can play for free forever. Also, you can go to your local library. They will probably have Dungeons and Dragons stuff because of how popular D&D is.
That's fine.
And you can just get that shit for free. You can just get that stuff for free. The
Very
other thing
true.
I can say is like there are other tabletop RPGs. Like we've just been talking about Dungeons and Dragons because Hasbro owns it, but like no one people have been playing so much of D&D. Like there are other games out there that you can play that do different stuff. Like if you want to play an X-Files, the X-Files or Gravity Falls, play Monster of the Week. If you want to be the Teen Titans, play Masks: A New Generation. If you want to play Control, you can play the Triangle Agency, which is a tabletop RPG about that kind of weirdness that you get in Control.
Mm,
There's just like a lot going on out there in the wide world. You don't have to be the person who only plays Halo. You can play everything.
yeah. And no, I feel like no one ever talks about these adjacent ones. It's always just the heavy hitter D&D. Like,
Yeah.
I'd even heard of
And
Triangle Agency,
Hasbro
and that
likes it.
sounds right up my freaking alley. Why have I never heard of that?
Triangle Agency is relatively new. That one it just got kickstarted, but I've seen it and it's really really fun.
Oh, cool.
It's
Okay.
good stuff. I'll send you a link to it after this.
Yes,
The
please.
other thing is like even Kath said this in the chat here of like that they're just talking about the Adventure Zone. Like support the creators who are doing what you like. I think that audiences can do for tabletop RPGs like they did for video games. Like supporting MinMax and Aftermath and other people like that of putting your money where your mouth is for people who are doing critical, interesting stuff that's happening in tabletop RPGs. Rascal just popped up, which is a website, a subscription website for tabletop RPG and for crit, but also for actual play. Like, give money to the actual play shows you love and support them and tell them you love them. Like, the best, and also buy third party stuff too. I want to give a shout out to Mage Hand Press that makes incredible subclasses and classes that got me back like excited about D&D when I
Oh,
was
cool.
starting to get burned out on it because they had interesting other subclasses and they had interesting other subclasses and classes and other stuff they've published. So people can always be more creative. They will, especially when Hasbro wants to be tight. Give your money to other people who deserve it. And that's ultimately because they want you to do whatever you want in your table and not trying to just take all the money for themselves as a corporation. That's me. This is join the party. That's me.
Ding.
I finished my presentation.
Amazing. That felt like a GDC talk. That was
I'm
great.
out. I'm out here, man. I was a high school English teacher, so like doing
Really?
presentations like this is my favorite thing in the entire world.
I love it. That was so. I love. I can really appreciate when someone does a presentation, and during the presentation, I'm like, oh wait, I think it slots in my brain. And I go, oh, I get it, and it's like I see the through line. Um, that's so great. What got you? I mean, obviously, because you're a DM and but
Yeah.
what got you to really want to look into this to this level to the point that you're like, oh hell yeah, I'm making a freaking presentation about this.
Well, first I wanted to show off my most recent big Baltro run.
Ooh,
First, I don't know if you can see I got 1.5 million, and I got over a
in a
million in one
hand.
hand. In one hand, I got good at it.
Meanwhile, I'm getting
Um,
freaking like 1,000.
Haley, I will help you. I got you. I will help you. I can do it. I will help you and Janet beat Balatro. I got it.
I need to beat
But
Baltro.
the thing that got me into this, I think there were when I was realizing Hasbro has had and Wizard of the Coast had a long, not tradition, but like they've been ignoring the things that people have wanted from this game for a long time. And I kind of realized, and as I got like really radicalized and galvanized by everything going on in 2020 and beyond from like a social justice perspective, but also like an economic perspective. And like, I started Multitude with some other people and like having my own business and really understanding like what goes into money and how this all worked and seeing the actual play go from a little seed to like really blooming into this massive genre and its relationship to the game. I'm like, there's people need to understand what they're purchasing and how much of a stranglehold Dungeons and Dragons has and what that means then for your ability to like play pretend and do creative stuff. Like creativity and making creative stuff goes hand in hand to me with understanding and having your six shooter loaded for not getting screwed over by big business and having people take advantage of you for in an economic and an occupational way.
What?
It's like how Ben always brings on people who just got laid off. Like that's the kind of thing you got to do.
Yeah,
It's like that's putting your money where your mouth is when you start your own thing and you want to be there and help out other people, and understand like what's going on.
for sure. No, I love this was great. question. What company do you think would do this IP justice if you had to pick one?
The Dungeons and Dragons IP?
Yeah, like what company do you think has a It's kind of tough because no company except for the huge top conglomerates could kind of own an IP like this and have the manpower to be sending out licensing agreements like crazy. Like I imagine they have hundreds of lawyers at their disposal and all they do is just license things all day 24/7 signing licensing agreements. But I'm trying even right now I'm thinking like what's the best case scenario for a thing like this? I mean
Well, I think that just keeping the OGL and locking it in and letting people make stuff and allowing people to buy third-party stuff constantly. That's the thing. Is like again, Dungeons and Dragons shouldn't have IP. Like that's crazy that an imagination machine has an IP. Like you're trying to sell me and tell me that the Forgotten Realms is better than like the superhero campaign I had set in a metropolis that sprung out of a lake town in upstate New York, like or the campaign we're currently running and join the party, which is a pirate story of plant and bug people. Like absolutely not.
I think it
So
just
it's more like let's let everyone play pretend however they want to play pretend and make money if people want to spend money on the pretend that they're making.
yeah, like a Creative Commons license or something like that. Like you have to cite
Exactly.
the owners, but other than that, do whatever you want.
Well, that's the interesting thing about the OGL is like the OGL was there forever, and Hasbro was trying to tweak it because they thought no one would notice, and then every single person noticed.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just completely change the whole core of a license to be the opposite and think no one would notice, and like you're legally obligated to disclose that you're updating it in that fashion too. So there's no real hiding around it.
Yeah. We're seeing this in media too. How like, Vice is a great example of this. How Vice just shut down their website and they're like, "No, we're just going to make social media content. It's whatever." It's like, what do you think the value of a media company is? It's the stuff they're making.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? And I think that reducing it to IP just doesn't make any sense because it's the stuff, it's the thing, and the things are valuable, not just the name and the shell and the IP for when you're talking about media.
Yeah, I'd be so curious to learn how they license things out. I bet of any IP ever that they are the most particular about ownership of derivative works because the value in D&D is the value within the then connected derivative works. So if they weren't making sure that, at least the big companies making these things, the Larian Studios, the Wizards of the Coast, what have you, if they're not making sure that they're assigning back all the derivative rights to everything they make within this set universe, it wouldn't be profitable for them. But that sucks. Like, wouldn't you just want it to be a joint IP? Joint IP does suck. It's such an interesting, any IP lawyer will tell you having joint ownership of IP is like the most annoying and worst thing ever. But yeah,
well, I think it's worth saying that like no one thought about this in the 70s when Gary Gygax invented it. For God's sakes, he called them hobbits. Like he wasn't thinking about this, and they just bought the company that owned this thing. Like that's the thing. The OGL was just there for a very long time, and then they tried to tweak it. Like no one was thinking about this in the advent of it because it was just a game.
Yeah.
And like TSR was a publishing company. It wasn't a game or an IP thing. I think I remember the episode I was on the MinMax show was when we talked about Barbie a little bit. And I was like, I'm concerned because if Barbie does well, Mattel's going to put out a kajillion toy movies. And guess what they're doing? Putting out a kajillion toy movies because they think like, we did it. Not that they didn't absolutely crush it with Barbie, but that like, no, it's not that the care was put into the game. It's that we can license this forever.
Yeah. Until it's in the public domain in a million years. In 170 years or so, whatever it is in the U.S. now. It's crazy high.
It's terrible. I know. I should have put Steamboat Willie in this. That's on me. I should have done that.
Just as a little FU to Disney. Yeah, that's something I'm very excited for, that I'll be dead for hundreds of years, is, wow, it's going to be cool when all of these things are in the public domain. And, 500 years from now, anyone can do whatever they want with any of these games, and they're all just public domain. Like, I can take Mario and do whatever I want. Like, that's just gonna be a crazy time for games. That's just me jumping ahead and being nuts, but I think about it sometimes.
Well, I don't know if Nintendo's going to do this because they're a Japanese company, so I don't know if like they have different thoughts and ideas about that. But like, Disney has been pushing stuff back from IP for so long,
Oh, their
and
lobbying
they're
is so
harvesting
annoying.
their stories from public domain in the first place.
Yep.
So it's like, I wonder if Mario is ever going to come into the public domain. I really wonder, like,
He
if it's
will.
just going to keep getting kicked down the road forever and ever and ever, or it's going to be like 1,000 years from now.
It's gonna like we do see instances of lobbying and the increasing of copyright protection lengths and stuff like that. That's pretty much what
Hmm.
Disney did with Mickey. Like he should have been in public domain, I think, in the early 2000s, and yet it was 2023, 2024 where he finally got put out. But
Mm.
yeah, that's the thing. I won't know because I'll be dead. I wonder if the world will
Yeah.
change and it'll be a different place. And they're like, "Hey, now the public domain doesn't even exist. Screw you, everyone."
Which
Like,
will happen first? Mario will be in public domain or we run out of water. I don't know. Everyone get in the chat and do a poll and figure out which one.
wow, the ultimate question. Someone's gonna find this podcast in a time capsule and be like, "They predicted the future. How did they
Can someone
know?"
ask that on the main feed on Thursday? Someone ask that question and Haley push it forward and say
Yeah.
it's from me.
Yeah, Crater saying in the chat, water will be copywritten first. It would be probably patented. The only water left in the
Ugh.
earth that can be drinkable, they'll find a way to patent the
I know.
drinking of
Which
it.
will expire first? Nintendo owning Mario or Nestle owning water? Yeah, which will expire first?
Run out of
But
water
like here's
100%.
yeah, see Toros and Nestle at the same time. We're on the same page. But like here's the thing, it's like corporations can't own your imagination. Just play whatever you want and support your favorite creators like MinMax and like join the party because we're doing live shows from March 21st to the 28th in Seattle, Chicago, Twin City, New York City, Boston,
So let me
DC.
check that back on the screen. Very exciting. Any final thoughts before we move on to a little quick topic I want to do before I got to community things? Thank you again
Yes.
for this presentation. This was amazing.
No, I mean, listen, I love talking about this stuff. Nothing makes me happier, and I'm glad I get to talk about it on MinMax. It's the tabletop RPG space is similar and yet so different from video games that like after getting Sarah on Join the Party, I'm like, yeah, I think I gotta bring my worker understanding media crit stylings over to MinMax.
Love it. I
Oh yeah.
nerdy discussions are always my fave. I can tell that you're a big nerd for this because it comes through. Those are always the best chats. And then something it's IP related. I kind of just want to talk about it quickly before we go to community things. But I don't know if you saw in the news the FromSoft got the trademark to Elden Ring, and I saw a
Oh,
bunch of posts about it. Yeah, so they it got assigned over to them, and so now they fully own the trademark to Elden Ring. And I saw a lot of people confuse trademarks with copyright. So what we were talking about right now is a lot of copyright. That was all copyright what we were talking about right now. But in terms of the Elden Ring assignment of the trademark, there was so much prophesizing. This means that they're gonna completely own the game, and this means that, and this means that. But I really think it was just an assignment of a trademark pursuant to some agreement they signed 10 years ago or something that dated it
right.
for having to happen.
Isn't
Then
this was like very similar to what happened this happened last week with the with Control, right? Where
yes, somewhat
where
similar.
it's like it doesn't really matter, but like people will announce it and be like, "Yeah, I'm glad we have it," but it's not like earth-shattering, right?
No, with the control thing, what happened there was they essentially were getting back some specific publishing rights and like marketing, I
Yeah.
think, or something. So it's not that they didn't own control. I actually I don't actually know the facts of the licensing
Yeah.
or publishing agreement, whether or not. Sometimes publishers will have you assign the IP to them and then they publish it and they assign it back to you after, contingent
Mhm.
on if you don't pay us back the advances, then we get to keep it or whatever kind of thing. We try to argue against that whenever we can when we're negotiating publishing deals because we're usually on developer
For
side.
sure.
And we say, no. The game developer should own the IP. They should own their IP the entire time, no matter what. And they grant you a license to use the IP however you need to do it, whether that be publishing, marketing, and distributing, and whatever. And then you grant them those non-exclusive licenses or exclusive, depending. So
Mhm.
the Remedy thing, I think it was just they had some non-exclusive or exclusive licensing to publish Control, and then it expired, or they just negotiated to give it back, and that was it. It wasn't really some big like reveal. It was just probably an agreement was terminating, or they were mutually terminating. It seemed pretty amicable,
Sure.
and they were just being transparent because someone pointed out to me that they're a public company, so they have to. So they were just kind of trying to put that on the record. So that's another copyright thing. And then for the Elden Ring thing,
Yeah.
this is just a straight up trademark. In terms of trademark ownership in the instance of publishing agreement situations, what I personally have seen looking at publishing agreements is sometimes the publisher can file a trademark on behalf of the developer just because they have more money, or it's easier for them to have that under their hat so they can do their publishing duties. Like, for example, here, publish Elden Ring all over the place, put it in stores, make, that kind of thing. And then they'll say, the earliest of blank years from the effective date, or upon this happening or this whatever, we'll assign it back to you. And that could mean that the agreement's ending, or it could just mean that that's just the day that they decided to assign back the trademark.
Right.
So I think any kind of guessing on what this could mean is complete conjecture, because literally an assignment of a trademark could happen for literally a million reasons, and it could be because other obligations are required first, or it's just the time to do this kind of thing. I didn't really think too much of it. I saw some news articles coming out there. It's like completely misrepresenting what it was. Like they would have the title of the thing be From Software owns Elden Ring now, and I'm like, that is not at all what that means. But that's what.
Well, they're also lawyers, Haley. Didn't you know? They know the law so well.
But it's
so
just,
they I don't know why you think they would be wrong.
It's just funny how that, I feel like, yeah, I know lawyer stuff, but we all know what a trademark is. We know if you get a trademark to something, it doesn't mean you own the whole thing. It means you have a trademark. You own the trademark associated with said product. Anyways, I just thought that was interesting, and it's again, I don't think we can really pull anything from that. I think it was just a business thing that happened, and they just assigned the trademark over, and probably nothing will follow up. Watch me get proven wrong when next week something gets announced that Elden Ring DLC is self-published, or I don't know.
Again, they just want to create news, and it's like people don't, and it's almost like it's a really juicy thing to do where it's like no one really understands the law, so we're going to publish something and everyone's going to be really excited about it and we'll be in the thing, but like it doesn't actually apply to us. Like I don't think they're that nefarious over at FromSoft, but it's like I don't think people know what they're talking about. It's like, all right, yeah, let's announce it and get
I don't even know if it was announced. I think they just, the USPTO, they post assignments, and probably somebody's job at those big websites like IGN or something is just to check the Control F the big developer names every day on the USPTO office and see what, because some good articles that understood what that change meant were like linking to the assignment doc, and I was like, nice. Like I love when websites do that, because I'm like, that means you read it and you're not just copy pasting someone else's article. Like I like you. That's always a great.
That's like the video game equivalent of TMZ, like watching the police, the police radar scanner. To be like, ooh, who got arrested?
Oh my god, so true. That is the closest games media can get to the police scanner is watching the Copyright Office and Trademark Office databases.
Yeah, exactly.
Nintendo just did something. Quick. But hey, I love seeing the coverage. Just like I saw some crazy misinformation about it going around, and I was like, yep. But anyways, but yeah, why don't we hop out of our chat here, and we do have some time before we can wrap up. If anyone in the MinMax Council member tier, all our lovely friends here, had any comments, questions, wanted to ask Eric something. Toro's putting their hand up. Not Weirder. We'll get Toro up first. I'll get you right after Not Weirder. We have some time. Hi, Toro. How are you?
Good. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you perfect. You actually sound really good. Do you have a good mic?
I just bought a new headset, actually, so thank you.
There we go. I could tell. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. It's so nice to have something to look forward to on a Monday when you do the bonus pod, Yeah.
That's nice. Thank you. I do look forward to it too. And right after this as well, I'm doing another Red Dead roleplay stream with Leo. So I'm excited for Eric. I've been doing that with Leo. We got into this very fun server where everyone takes roleplay really serious, and we have these characters and we don't break character. Like we're not in a Discord call. We just only talk to each other via the game and send letters and stuff if we get lost. It's so fun. We've been having a lot of fun with it.
That's awesome. Watch out for the Pinkertons trying to take your magic card.
Leo got kidnapped episode 1, and he sent me a letter, and I had to he just said, I think I'm in Henniganstead, and I had to quite literally run around Henniganstead and be like, Pelon, which is his character's name, trying to find him like we were in 1891. Like, it was really fun. Sorry, Toro. What did you have?
No, it's good.
No, it's okay. I was gonna say during the COVID lockdowns, we used Red Dead Online. There's actually a totally serviceable Texas Hold'em like version in Red Dead Online, and all the poker night guys who couldn't get together, we used Red Dead Online to like meet up and play poker together. It was pretty fun.
That's fun. I love that. That's super cool.
Well, thanks for having me on. Eric, I loved your presentation. It provoked a million thoughts in me, and I'm going to try and structure them in a coherent way. And so first of all, I completely agree with everything you said, but I also wanted to sort of present a counterpoint for the discussion based on my own experience.
Okay.
Sure.
So I've been reading the Forgotten Realms Legend of Drizzt books since I was like 7 years old. There's like 35 of those books now. I reread them all the time. Those are my childhood best friends, those characters, you know? I went from that into like I played the Baldur's Gate games, and then but I read the books, started watching Critical Role a couple years ago. Baldur's Gate 3 was like my gift from heaven of my perfect game when it came out. And then I've started to tabletop D&D was the last piece of that journey, where I sort of went through all those steps of this sort of corporatized, monetized IP of Dungeons and Dragons before I started getting into more of like my homebrew stuff. Yeah. And I've actually been watching my girlfriend going down a similar arc of Baldur's Gate 3 to being able to watch Critical Role and actually like find it kind of entertaining to wanting to do tabletop D&D. And so I wanted to present all that to you and ask, is it necessarily that if Hasbro monetizes the heck out of D&D and is super successful and like standardizes the stuff and a lot of people start playing digital D&D and they have a lot of control and are getting a ton of money from the players, is that necessarily a bad thing for tabletop D&D if the end result is it ends up sort of expanding the pie of people who are interested in anything to do with it?
Interesting.
You know what I mean?
That's a great question, because we're talking about 5th edition still, where you can play that at home with a book that's published and you can do that. I'm concerned of what happens when 1D&D starts, where you can only really have the best non-janky experience, not online. Because it's like, that's what I'm trying to say. That slide I had about like how do you break human nature, which is going from something that's written in modules, which is what a module, I had a slide of this before, but I deleted it because it was too nerdy. But like a module is a book, is like an adventure that you read that they publish and you can play and just like do what they want to do, set in the Forgotten Realms. And you go from usually modules to doing your own homebrew, especially when you're inspired by actual play stuff. And that's that's human nature, growing and being like, I feel confident enough to make up my own story and do my own imagination machine. I'm worried, and because you're correct for what 5th edition is doing and has been doing, I'm concerned about what's going to happen when 1D&D starts and they cut off the imagination part, you know, like when they're just eating their own tail in pursuit of profit instead of allowing people to grow, even in the way that you described, in both the way you described Toro and the way I described, you know, like coming to it and doing your own thing. I'm concerned of what's going to happen next.
I feel like people who are going to play tabletop D&D, and especially homebrew tabletop D&D, they will gravitate to that because that's the kind of personality they have. They want to be, you know, doing like that improv personality almost. Like they want to role play with their friends and be goofy about it and funny. Yeah. But I feel like a lot of people find that really intimidating, and having something that's more accessible and pre-planned and sort of like a stock, what you call bog standard fantasy, I feel like makes it a lot more accessible and opens the door for going, like I'd almost consider homebrew D&D to be the like connoisseur's version of fantasy. Right? But you start with McDonald's before you start going into the really fancy, you know, locally owned restaurants, right? Like it's a progression.
Yeah, listen, I'm also not like these are all separate ideas to me. Is like one, I think the Forgotten Realms are boring. But like if I always say, because this is I do creative stuff full time. It's like if you have like an hour and you have kids and you're like, I just want to play the module, do it and like explore, let your imagination run wild. I'm just worried that they're going to put profit ahead of having fun and playing pretend in any sort of way accessible in any sort of way that is buffeted by accessibility and like the easiest way to do it. I'm also not pushing back on people who like Baldur's Gate and are learning how to play Dungeons and Dragons through Baldur's Gate. I want them to take the next step forward and actually engage with the imagination game. But like do however you're gonna do. I mean, listen, even Justin and Griffin McElroy from the Adventure Zone said they now know how to play Baldur's Gate, now know how to play Dungeons and Dragons after playing Baldur's Gate 3. Now they had an actual play podcast for 6 years. That's worrisome to me. But like, however they're gonna do it, they're gonna do it, right? So I agree with you, Toro, is that, but I'm concerned they're gonna cut off, like they're gonna dam up the river, so to speak, for in
Yeah.
pursuit of profit instead of allowing people to have imagination
Yeah,
and play and just do silly things and just be silly together.
So the only one more question I want to throw at you, sorry for taking so much time, is
That's right.
if I'm Chris Cox and I'm sitting here listening to this discussion, I'm thinking there like I don't, the Pinkertons thing is funny and it happened and all that, but like I can't send the Pinkertons into every person playing tabletop D&D's living room and control what they do with the 5e rule set that's out there in the world and exists. Like
Right.
creative people and imaginative people are always going to be that way, and no matter how hard we try and monetize it, we can't stop that. So I guess I don't see it as much of a tension, but maybe I'm just sort of not seeing the whole picture.
Well, you have to remember Chris Cox as the CEO is squeezing as much blood out of the stone possible, and he wants 10x returns. He wants as much money as possible. He doesn't want something that is, and a corporation like Hasbro does not want something to just exist. And you as a person are not a corporation, so you don't think like that. You know what I mean? It's like they don't want it to just exist. They want to squeeze every dollar possible at it, even at the risk of breaking it. And that's the issue.
Mm-hmm.
After negative 45% profits last quarter.
Yeah, and the
They're
Furbies did good. Hey, don't talk about Furbies like that, Haley. Furbies did okay.
They said the Furbies were okay and Transformers and everything. What about My Little Pony? I thought that was a good rock to squeeze. Nothing coming out of there these days. So well.
They're still pushing it in there. They've really bound in the bigger grower, whatever, bigger, faster, stronger strategy they had is like they are really just pushing IP. That's the Dungeons and Dragons movie. That's My Little Pony TV shows, and they're gonna keep pushing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, and also the fact that I'm glad you read those books. Those books seem tight, and like Ed Greenwood seems like a really good fantasy writer. It's just like when it becomes IP, not part of the IP machine, that's when we have an issue.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, thank you for having me. And I just want to say I really appreciate encouraging consumers to sort of be more creative, take more control, and support people who are doing similar things. I think is, it's yeoman's work and it's really important. And thank you for doing that.
Yeah, unrelated. I'm doing live shows from March 21st to the 20th.
And good plug. Thanks, Toro.
Thank you.
And Kath in our chat here can't come on mic. I don't know if you see her question there.
I do.
Yeah.
Kath wanted to ask about accessibility through having character sheets online. My husband can only play because the computer does the stat adjustments and roll bonuses for them. Hey, accessibility tools are incredible, and like people do have those out there. It's more that it's inside of D&D Beyond, and like they are locking all of this stuff into their proprietary service. That's the issue. And how they're trying to hold on to it, and that's the only way they can get every single person at a 5-person table to pay.
Hi, Not Weirder. How are you?
Hello. Am I coming through?
You are, but you're very quiet. Is there a way to get closer to your mic?
I think I tried my Discord settings down. 1 second.
Sure. I can hear you, but it's very quiet.
It's like Not Weirder was a little mouse asking a question.
Am I a little bit louder now?
Yes, you sound much better now. How's it going?
Okay, perfect. It's good. Sorry, I'm using like a cheap Razer mic, so I don't know how good it is. But anyways, I'm another Eric who is also into RPGs. So this is like a weird looking into a mirror moment. Yeah, I haven't played a lot, but I appreciate them just like as something to read. So I was wondering, Eric, if you have any upcoming like RPGs you want to shout out, something that you think the community or just like anyone should look into if you're into kind of like weird, unique RPGs.
Oh man, yeah, there's some cool stuff. Triangle Agency is one that's been popping off lately. That it's very controlled, very weird. There's a lot of really cool, just weird stuff out there. God,
What
in
would you
terms of
call
other
that
weird stuff.
genre, Eric?
Oh, because I love that genre of like it's almost like slipstream fiction
Slipstream fiction. Okay,
or
yeah.
like magical realism. I know magical realism is like one specific stuff from like Spain, but it's always
Oh.
I always like workplace I almost like workplace dramas that have like one weird thing, one magical thing that's different. So I always call it that. But it's like very much like people at an agency trying to contain
The magic
magical
stapler
problems.
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
but
cool.
and they also have powers of their own. I really like Triangle Agency.
This
I can
is
recommend.
very different, but I was reading the Troika RPG book, which was very weird. But like really, really interesting. There was something in like one of the like campaigns where you can just like enter someone's dream, and if you don't wake them up, then you're just in a completely different environment for like the rest of the
Whoa.
game, which is super interesting.
That's cool.
The stuff made by Grant Howitt as part of Rowan Decker and something, but he's done a lot
Rowan
of weird stuff
or something. I have Spire like in my bedroom
Yes,
right now.
Spire
It's
is
very good.
is so weird. I love the moves in Spire. They're so absolutely strange. It's a lot of stuff like that
Oh, yeah.
that you can read. I also want to recommend again, Mage Hand Press has incredible third party Dungeons and Dragons stuff, and I have a Valda's Spire of Secrets that has tons of new classes and subclasses, and you could just read that forever. It's just thinking about all of the classes and you could have and could do. Just supporting your third party folks out there.
Neat.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks.
No
Thanks,
problem.
Not Weirder.
Thank you.
Well, I think that brings us naturally to our conclusion. I don't see any other hands raising here. But Eric, thank you so much for coming on and being such a passionate little guy about this. You have me all infectious on it. Now I'm like, yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 tricked me. I like the Forgotten Realms. How did it do that?
I can't lay that at Larian's feet. They did such a good job.
The game
right?
is
If Baldur's
Gate,
the reason why it's good has nothing to do with like Asterion being a vampire or the fact that there are Illithids. And it's like, hey, when everyone talks about Baldur's Gate 3, no one talks about Act 3 that revolves around human slavery. Like no one ever talks about it, right?
True.
So it's like any and all of the good parts go to Larian. But I've been thinking so much just about the IP creation, especially because like the D&D movie was like a gentleman's 5 out of anything, and like it had Chris Pine in it, sure, but it's like bards, I don't care. Red mages, I don't care. It's like I want from how much and games and also all media is about like the interesting worlds we live in. The fact that Dungeons and Dragons and Hasbro is trying to shove this like bog standard, and I'm not even talking about like what Toro was saying about really getting in gritty and exploring what the Forgotten Realms is in those novels is like, no, they just want Hugh Grant to say Baldur's Gate as many times as possible to remind you where you are.
Yeah, very true. No, I appreciate the deep dive into this. This was great. Yeah, so thank you everyone for joining the Backstage Pass. Or I should say the MinMax Council tier live right now. Supporters on Patreon. I always say MinMax first. I'm so conscious of that. I always flub it up. I'm trying to be better like Ben. Patreon.com/MinMax with 2 N's. So all of our supporters at the Backstage Pass tier will have an audio version of this podcast that you're listening to right now. Hi, Backstage Pass tier. In our MinMax Council.
That's me. I'm going to skip this well, I'm a podcast RSS tier, but it's like, man, I really got to skip this episode of bonus pod because it was me.
Oh my god, I listen to MinMax when I have my shower every day, and the weeks that I'm on, I just am silent in the shower. I'm like, I'm bored. I should just listen to a different podcast, but I'm always in a rush in the morning. So this week,
can I interest you in the multitude suite of podcasts? I got plenty of podcasts for you, Haley.
Yes, thank you. I would love that. And why don't we finish off by just thanking Eric again? And do you want to do one last plug for your Join the Party tour?
Absolutely. If you like what I'm talking about here, I put my money where my mouth is with Join the Party, an actual play podcast I've been doing for a very long time. I'm the best DM in podcasting, folks. I think about crit and then I apply it by doing fun stuff. Right now, we are doing a world of plant and bug people set in a fun pirate world. It's kind of like
Ooh.
Plants vs. Zombies and Redwall meets One Piece. It has been so
Oh my
much
god.
fun to
What
do.
a pitch.
It's been
Amazing.
so much. Vertistello has been so much fun to be a part of. We have like a tea witch in there. We have a butterfly gunman. We have what is Umby? He's a pawpaw fruit who throws bombs. Absolutely incredible.
Cute.
I've been enjoying it so much. And if you like what I'm talking about, and especially Minnesota, Minneapolis, St. Paul, come out, but also Seattle, Chicago, New York City, Boston, DC, and Philly. If you like what I'm talking about, I'm going to put that where my mouth is during our live shows before Join the Party and Spirits, which is a boozy dives into myths and legends. We're doing live shows and really cool stuff surrounding that.
Amazing. And what specific day are you in Minneapolis? Maybe we'll shout that one out in particular in case.
I will share that one in particular.
Yeah.
If you want to find the tickets, you can go to jointhepartypod.com/live, which is where I am. For the Rolling Bones tour, we are in Minneapolis on March 22nd at Granada,
Perfect.
which is I hear is really, really fun.
Amazing. Well, I hope you enjoy your tour, and thank you so much for being on again. And thank you everybody for listening. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and thanks again. Bye.
Bye.
And Twitch listeners, I will take you on a little journey, on a raid. / I think they're recording Deepest Dive soon.
Ooh.
So maybe we will just finish it off there today.
Ooh,
Or I could raid
that's fun.
I could raid you somewhere too in the in-between, but just make sure you come back.
Where?
Make
Yeah.
sure, and guess who's playing Baldur's Gate 3 right now? Mr. Kyle Bosman. How apropos.
I'm sure. Go bother Kyle. Everyone go bother Kyle.
How apropos. You were on the episode with Kyle Bosman, and then we just talked about Baldur's Gate 3 for like a whole hour. This is perfect.
And then in the comments, everyone is gonna say, "Oh my God, Kyle Bosman," instead.
All right, bye everybody. Thanks everybody on Twitch. See you later.
Bye. Haley, do you need anything else from me, or
No.
am I just